Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-American podcast. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com, and the president of the Football Writers Association of America. We're coming to you live on our CFB Nation YouTube channel again. If you want to subscribe, just go over to youtube.com, search CFB Nation, and click subscribe. We have a three-man show for you today as we welcome in Mike DeCourcy, senior writer at sportingnews.com and member of the United States Basketball Writers Hall of Fame. He also knows a thing or two about college football, and he knows a thing or two about arguing with Bill Bender. So here we are. Welcome in, Mike.
See, Bill doesn't take that. Bill doesn't even laugh at that. Come on.
I mean, because it's implicit at this point. That's why we brought you on, and
This is going to be fun. So we want to talk. We want to bring Mike on. He's working on a story for sportingnews.com this week on how it is a strange year for college quarterbacks and for NFL teams who are, struggling a month into the season. They're already looking for next year's QB to draft. And the names at the top of the list are not the same names we had at the top of the list in August and September. We also want to talk a little bit about James Franklin and Penn State situation. Mike has written about him a little bit this year, so he can chip in there on that discussion, and then a little bit more Big Ten talk. But before we do that, as always, we'll have our Trocchi trivia question that we ask at the beginning of the show, and then we let Mike, I don't know if you knew this, we ask a question at the end of the show. I let Bender ponder it throughout the show to kind of distract him while he's trying to answer the other questions. And then at the end of the show, he usually gets it right, even though they're pretty hard. So when we have a guest, you are obviously welcome to chip in as well. So think about this question as we go through the show. It's Big Ten themed. It's a little basketball too, Mike, just so we could get your strength and see if you can put Bender in his place with a nice answer here. Can you name the last Big Ten school to win the Big Ten football championship game and the Big Ten men's basketball tournament in the same school year? Can you name the last school to win both the championship in December and the championship in March in the same year? We will revisit that at the end of the show. So, all right, let's get into it. Strange year for QBs. We talked about last week a little bit that, Bill Connelly from ESPN had his quarterback rankings through the month of September. He didn't have last week, of course, and he had his top, 25 or whatever. And that list looked a lot different than it did in August. It didn't have Garrett Nussmeier in there, didn't have Arch Manning in there, didn't have Cade Klubnik in there. So, Mike, you came to me with the idea that you wanted to write about, how the QBs have flipped, and these poor NFL teams that are looking to be rescued already, they have to change their focus a little bit.
Well, I think it's been fascinating because living in Pittsburgh, the draft is going to be here in the city for the first time ever next spring in April of 2026. There's actually a countdown clock somewhere adjacent to Acrisure Stadium for when the draft will begin.
For that big
they've got lots of more important stuff.
Nobody plays football; they just walk across the stage, but everybody loves it. So there you go.
It's amazing. Like the Super Bowl's coming, and the Steelers would like to be in that. The AFC champ, all that. No, we're worried about the draft already, and it is different because they have, since the end of the Ben Roethlisberger era, the Steelers fans have been through the Kenny Pickett delusion, I call it. It is true on draft night for those listening. Immediately after the pick was announced, I tweeted simply, "The Steelers will regret this for years." And I got harangued like I've never, like almost no opinion. There's only one other opinion I ever issued that I got harangued as much as that one. The first one, which was about Sidney Crosby's captaincy of the Penguins, turned out to be probably wrong. But the second one, I could not have been more right. They still are regretting it. And so they are in this, even though they're not necessarily having a bad year, they have a 41-year-old quarterback. So they're definitely going to be in the picture for drafting a quarterback next year. And so here around Pittsburgh, I think more than ever, they're keyed into, okay, so Nussmeier, what's he like? And Klubnik, what's he like? And Arch Manning, is he all that? And what about this Aller guy? He's right there up the street. That didn't work the last time, but maybe we'll try it again. And so they've been watching all these guys play, and they're like, wait a second, this was supposed to be a good quarterback class. What's happening? Well, it may still be. It just may not be the guys that initially were projected. I've talked to multiple football experts, draft experts in advance of writing this, and they think there's still a feeling like this can still be a good group. It's just, I don't think they're writing off Nussmeier yet because he's been playing hurt. Although that lack of that injury has suggested, does he really have the arm that's necessary to go deep? And maybe we need to see him 100% healthy to know for sure. But there have been guys who have emerged, and the top of that list is Fernando Mendoza at Indiana. He has been outstanding for the Hoosiers, even superseding that Ohio U grad not named Bill Bender, who was so great last fall. Mendoza has been tremendous, and they just absolutely destroyed Illinois in what was sort of a home showdown type game. This is going to be a big game, and it was like over in like 7 minutes, and Mendoza was a big part of that. And there are other players who've emerged. John Mateer, unfortunately injured, but boy, when he played, he had some spark. He dynamic, some nice touch. Again, still need to see whether he can go deep, but showed a lot.
He'll be back.
He'll be back. Yeah, and that's the other thing is that, the guys that we're talking about who've been poor, and their teams have been poor, it's not over. I mean, they still have 8-9 games and pro days in the combine to show that. Don't forget what I did in September. I was lousy. Our team was lousy, but this is me. This is who you want to play for. This is who you want to play for you. They still have that opportunity.
I think all of those guys are day 2 guys. Like, and it starts. Okay, Mike, if you're a Steelers guy, you're saying when you go down these guys one by one, you have to ask yourself one question: do I want that guy to be the franchise quarterback of my favorite team? And I just think all of those guys are who they are. Like Cade Klubnik, his completion percentage is actually better than it was last year. So, like, when we're freaking out about him, I think Garrett.
That's what happens when you go against Bill Belichick and you go 22 for 24.
Either way, it still is. Like, he played against Georgia last year and struggled. Like, we've seen this movie. And I think Garrett Nussmeier's hurt. Yeah. I just think he's hurt, and it's hard to judge there. I think Drew Aller is exactly who he is.
Yeah.
When we try to pump him up as the number 1 pick, last year there was those reports. I was like, no, he's day 2 guy. He's got great potential. He's a great kid. He's got great, measurables. I like his mental makeup. He's not a first-round quarterback. So, like, again, and I'm a Green Bay fan. We talk about this all the time, where our franchises are a little snobby because we expect success every year, and that's fair. But they do it by running their organization the right way,
right?
And the right way in air quotes, but those guys are not.
Both had Aaron Rodgers at the helm.
Yeah, I don't think. You know what? I was doing some research this morning, and the guy that could creep up that board is Luke Altmaier. A good intermediate range thrower. He's elevated Illinois. He's not, like, you can't pin the Indiana loss on him. He doesn't play safety. So, like, I think he's a guy that could creep up there. You look at his passing statistics under pressure. You look, and he has an opportunity this weekend to increase his stock. I'm not under the illusion that they're going to beat Ohio State, but if he plays well and they hang around, that's a guy that could jump up. So, and again, I don't know that he's a day 1 guy. And
you didn't address Mendoza. What do you think there?
I think he's really good, and I liked Rourke last year, but Rourke was a day 2 guy.
Yeah,
like, can Mendoza? He's got a chance this weekend to really elevate his profile. I'm not, their opinions vary on him. Again, leader type guy, and you can't ignore the touchdown to interception ratio. And I know we're going to talk more about Indiana here in a little bit. You really can't ignore them anymore. Like, we can't just pass that off and say this is a fluke. They're the real deal, I think. And, like when I watch NFL quarterbacks, though, it's intermediate range. Can they take a hit? And there's just not that number one holy, franchise guy out there this year, in my opinion.
Dave Wilson from CBS Sports put out a mock draft yesterday. 5 quarterbacks went in the first round. Bender, I'm going to go to you first. How do these names grab you as far as potential first-round guys? Dante Moore. He had Dante Moore, Mendoza, Jordan Mailata, Ty Simpson, and then John Mateer. Low in the first round.
I mean, that when we say it's a bad year for quarterback, it's a bad year for returning quarterbacks. But 5 of the top 8 guys in passer rating are from the Big Ten. Mike was talking with Mendoza, Moore, Altmaier, Sayin, Mailata. So it's not like maybe everybody's mad because the Big Ten actually has good quarterbacks now. And it's been a while since we could say that. Mateer, I do. I think he's the one that's got a little Baker Mayfield in his game. And, Mike, you can weigh in. Like I said, I mean, does any of those guys grab you?
Well, I was really starting to like what I was seeing from Mateer when the injury happened. There's just a spark there, a creativity, an energy to his play that I really liked. And I hope that when he's healthy, that he can recover that and that his health returns soon, because the more time you have to play, the better off you and your team are, and the more evaluation opportunities that you get. Mendoza, I've only seen in the Illinois game, and I probably stopped watching that game at halftime. So I think he's got a lot of opportunity to show what he's capable of. I should say I did see him in person last year playing against Pitt, and they were competitive in that game, but that Cal team wasn't good enough for you to really get a feel that Mendoza was outstanding and a great prospect. And that's one of the things that's a challenge for NFL teams to evaluate, is how much of it is the system and how much of it is the player. And that's why when the statistics, look, I want to see a guy have a good completion percentage, but I'm not worried like for a year ago when we saw Sanders, Shedeur Sanders have the greatest completion percentage in the history of the game. I didn't care about that. I just want to know, could he go deep? And that was my problem with Jackson Dart. Can he go deep? But I know he has touch. He's got a great touch, but can he go deep? If you can't go deep, you can win, but you're never going to win at all. You're never going to win big, and if you can't go deep, and that's something that we still need to see from a lot of these quarterbacks, and Mateer being one of them. You didn't really get a chance to see that, but you think about Monday Night Football this week and what you saw from Jacksonville. And the throw on the final drive that Trevor Lawrence made. I mean, that's what wins in the NFL. It was a ridiculous throw and a great catch, but the throw was like, it was like one of those throws you're like, how does that even happen by a human being? And you got to see that from college guys now and then to know whether or not they're capable of playing at that level and excelling. And you don't always see it because in college football, you don't often have to go that deep in order to make a play. You can go intermediate and still get 40 yards because the defenses get so spread out.
Well, and I think, to your point, of all these years that I've done college football for Sporting News, the 4 guys that stand out where I was at the game and you could tell they throw, we could quarterback guru it all we want, just from the press box. That guy's throwing it different. Yes. Lawrence is one of them. Baker was another one. Lamar in different ways because it was like Lamar had the arm, but he would be 20 yards down the field before you look up. I mean, those are the guys that we're talking about. There's one I'm missing that I was just thinking about. But the point is, Burrow. Burrow was different. And Burrow was it was also, it's kind of how I feel about Julian Sayin. You have trouble gauging it because look who Julian Sayin has an 80.2 completion percentage. There are people that can't go complete 8 out of 10 passes in 7-on-7 on air.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being serious. But some of that is Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate.
Yeah.
And who he's throwing to. And some of it is they're just better than everybody else that they've played so far. So
right.
It's hard to gauge Julian Sayin NFL-wise right now, but I'm sure he'll be fine.
I saw a clip this week of Ohio State against Minnesota. I don't know if you guys saw it. They were running a fake reverse to Jeremiah Smith. 5 Minnesota defenders went to Jeremiah Smith, and then Carnell Tate went deep. So that was funny there. All right, let's talk. We talked about Drew Aller. Let's talk about Drew Aller's coach a little bit. Okay, James Franklin, Penn State, basically they got beat twice. They got beat by Oregon, and then they got beat by Oregon the next week, Oregon hangover the next week. They go out to UCLA. We talked a little bit about the danger of a hangover in terms of a letdown and then going 3 time zones and playing a team that's going to be in a half-empty stadium, hasn't won a game, hasn't led in any of the games. They switched offensive coordinators on Tuesday. And I don't know if I'd say predictably, but they dropped way behind. They settled in the second half. Penn State had multiple opportunities to come back and wasn't able to do it. So this is clearly the loss of the season for anybody really across all of college football. It was 24-point spread, I think it was. And, the question is, Mike, you've written about written about James Franklin a little bit. What do you do? He can't win the big one. He always wins the little ones. Well, now he didn't win a little one, right? So, what outcome? I've seen many people weigh in on this. Is it going to be, $50 million buyout? That's not really going to happen at Penn State. Will he leave voluntarily? Will they have a parting of the ways? Will it be a John Calipari exiting Kentucky because things had sort of run its course? Despite a high level of success, both parties just kind of wanted to move on a little. Anything you see out of James Franklin right now?
Well, I think the first thing is to figure out where this season ends. I look, I know that the UCLA game was an absolute disaster and that the Oregon game was a disappointment, a significant disappointment, because they'd geared up for that game and they played a ridiculous schedule. And that part is on whoever made the schedule. Playing those 3 games in advance of Oregon was a joke. And so some of what happened against Oregon is we weren't ready for that because we played Nevada, FIU, and Villanova to get ready for Oregon. I mean, come on. That's like playing the 3 of us to get ready for Purdue basketball. I mean, come on. So some of that's on their prep. The Oregon game it wasn't as disastrous as all that. It could have been overcome. Now they have so much more to overcome that they put that UCLA loss on themselves. But they still have Ohio State on the road. Are they going to win that? You don't think so? I don't think so. But who thought UCLA was going to beat Penn State? And then they have Indiana at home. And, of course, they have to get to those games with no more blemishes. They have to. But I think those games are consecutive weekends, the first 2 weekends in November. And what if they win them? Then what happens? It's the same thing as a year ago, Bill. You know this better than anybody. Same thing as a year ago. Everybody wanted to fire Ryan Day after the Michigan game, and then he goes out and wins the national championship. So look, he and the Nittany Lions have created for themselves a mountain to overcome, 2 mountains, those 2 teams. But if they traverse those 2 mountains, it changes the season entirely. I am not defending what's gone on to this point. I'm just saying college football is different now. It's more like college basketball than it's ever been. Your season is not over in October. It's over when you get toward the middle end of November and you're not any good. But it's not over in October. And so we'll see. I think $50 million is too much to think about. Will somebody come and remember, in order for John Calipari to go to Arkansas had to be hungry for John Calipari. Is there anybody out there that's going to pay James Franklin enough for him to leave $50 million behind? Maybe. But I think that we'll know much better where this is headed after the second weekend in November. And like I said, I'm not predicting that they're going to do anything with those games. I'm just saying that none of us, not a single one of us, had UCLA defeating Penn State last weekend, and they still did it. So that's my feeling about the rush to judgment that happens in all of sports, but particularly college sports now.
Their season's over. Like, let's let that sit for a minute. Their season's over. And I was going back and forth with Bill about this. Mike, I cannot fathom living in Columbus, Ohio, and having Ohio State lose that game on Saturday. It's not the same. Like, if Ohio State goes out, loses to Jerry Neuheisel in a half-empty Rose Bowl, well, it wouldn't be half-empty. There would be a bunch of Ohio State fans in that stadium. It'd probably be 80-20 in red. I think Ryan Day would get fired. And that is, if not that day, soon. And then I was talking to a couple of Ohio State fans last night, and they did lose at Iowa under Urban Meyer. They had a really bad loss at Iowa.
Yes.
They had that loss at Purdue,
right,
where Purdue honored Tyler Trent, and it was an emotional night, and they ran into a buzzsaw at Purdue. This loss at UCLA to me is 1,000 times worse. And they can.
It is, but like I said, are you saying it's over even if they beat Indiana and Ohio State?
I think they still might be on the outside looking in. Maybe, because I think that the ante to get in the playoff is 10 wins. And I'm going to spell that out with the SEC and Big Ten playoff pictures later this week at Sporting News. I did the SEC last night, and I think it's 10 wins. I give them I don't know. I get that they're competitive with Ohio State. They have to beat them.
Yeah.
And if they don't, and I don't give them much of a chance of doing that in Columbus.
I don't either. But
so,
I'm not disagreeing with your belief that it's over. I'm disagreeing with the fact that it's over. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I agree. I agree with you there. So if they go to 10-2, they could backdoor in, be 11, 12 seed in the playoff. That's possible. I still think they're going to beat Indiana, possibly, depending on where their headspace is after the Ohio State game.
Right.
It's just, this to me felt like Lloyd Carr App State moment where, and here's where I'm going to kind of defend Franklin. Michigan, I wrote this Saturday, Michigan loses to Ohio State, loses a Rose Bowl to USC, comes back with the top 5 ranking, loses to App State, which I would argue Penn State's, from a talent perspective, Penn State's loss to UCLA might actually be worse, but it would never be worse from shock value.
Right.
They lose to Oregon. The Carr era is essentially over at that point, but they finished, I think they finished 8-4, 9-3. They beat Illinois that year, but you knew the Carr era was over. That moment, that App State moment, this is over. And then what did they do? They kind of set the program back for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's why I think James Franklin will probably be back next year no matter what. But it's, how do you handle going 9-3? And you can weigh on this because I think you were around the team. How do you handle going 9-3 when you were ranked number 2 and the excitement level around that program was probably as much as the year they had LeVar and Courtney Brown? And I think you were around that team.
No, that was I was gone after from then.
But you watched that team.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you handle it. I know that like Penn State's had worse seasons than this one seems likely to become. I mean, the interesting thing is that about the Franklin era is how quickly some Penn State fans forgot how not great it was in the early part of this century. I mean, Joe had, I think, 4 losing seasons, if I remember correctly, in his final in this century. I believe that was the number. He was not wildly successful. In 2005, they had a great team and blew it against Michigan in an era when you had to kind of not blow it against Michigan in order to stay in the picture. And this is a more what's interesting is it's a more forgiving era competitively, because you can lose a game like this and still come back and get to where you want to go. You can lose a game like the Michigan game. Ohio State went into that. Remember, Ohio State went into last year's playoff with 2 losses and still won it all. So it's a more forgiving era from that standpoint. But from a criticism standpoint, and sometimes from a booster/administration standpoint, it's a much less forgiving era now than it's ever been. They make decisions faster and more assertively, and sometimes more erroneously.
And it was set up on a tee so well for them this year. They had all these guys back. They had a veteran quarterback, NFL quarterback, everybody thought. They had great guys on defense. They're coming off a Final Four, basically. And it's just like that formula that Ohio State used and then Michigan used prior, it was Penn State's turn.
Yes.
And Franklin's been on the cusp for so long. So all of those factors, like, it's just the perfect storm of disappointment.
And I'm on. I'll ask Mike this, and being, when we watch the Steelers or the Packers go on the West Coast, I'm sorry, but that excuse doesn't work for me.
The West Coast part of it?
Yeah, like I get that the travel's hard. It does, but no Pittsburgh Steelers fan is going to say, oh man, they had that 3 time zone trip to Arizona. I can't, you got to account for that. No, they're professionals. And in this era, so like I get that it's a thing. It is an absolute thing, especially for those Eastern and Central time zone schools going west. It might be a thing Michigan is an underdog at USC this weekend.
Right.
And I think Michigan's a better team, but they're an underdog because of the travel. And this is, when I hear that, this is what y'all signed up for. And
I don't give them any grace at all for it being a road trip, it being a 3 time zone road trip or anything. No, there's no excuse for losing that game because they didn't have like Aller didn't go down or anything like that. There's no excuse. They weren't ready. Mentally, they were not ready. They thought it was going to be easy. They looked at 0-4. They looked at UCLA having fired their coach, and they thought it was going to be easy. And all of a sudden, they looked up and barely had touched the ball, and they're down 10-0. So, no, there's no excuse for that loss. And that runs all the way up to the head coach. The head coach is as much responsible for making sure that his athletes are prepared to play that game as the players are to play it. But all I'm saying is I'm reserving final judgment until they go through the next month of football. And if I had to say, and I don't bet on sports and certainly not on the sports I cover, but if I were to bet my money, I would bet my money on it ending up exactly where everybody thinks, where they probably lose both of those games. But I think they're also good enough to win both of them.
Yeah, I think
they're best.
I would hedge it and say 9-3. I think they're going to lose to Ohio State, beat Indiana, finish 9-3. 9-3 is probably they're definitely on the outside at that point.
Yes,
because of that crappy non-conference schedule and the non-conference schedule.
Yes.
Which, there might be a 9-3 team try to wiggle in, but you've got a better chance being Michigan or Oklahoma. You know what I mean? Like, because you stepped out and played that game.
And then maybe James Franklin thinks about going to Florida.
Yep.
Now there's that would be a plausible thing. Now, of course, Florida's coach, I don't know, did he save himself over the weekend or not? They got a long way to go, but yeah, I could see that. But they may not want to hire the guy who just got done failing. That's the question. We'll see whether or not he's as attractive. And Florida, maybe not, but maybe somewhere more like in one of the 2 next tier leagues, the Big 12, ACC, somewhere like that might be interested. I don't know. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see where we are in the middle of November, because it's going to either going to be completely reversed or it's going to harden. It's going to be, now exactly where this is, exactly where it's gone, and this will be, if they don't win both of those games, the biggest Penn State disappointment since probably the Michigan loss in 2005, at least in a football sense.
So, all right, I got one more question for you, my 2 Big Ten friends here, as we get ready for the biggest game in the Big Ten this weekend. Mike, you work for a little bit for the Big Ten Network. Bender, you're in Columbus, Ohio. We've heard the names Michigan. We've heard the names Penn State. We've heard the names Ohio State during this conversation. Oregon is playing Indiana as a top 10 showdown. And I was just wondering, no disrespect to either program, but how do longtime Big Ten fans feel as the conference's flag is being carried, at least this weekend, by a team that was in the Pac-12 forever, and just came into the league, and then one of the doormats of the league, Oregon and Indiana. It's the Big Ten fan, Joe Big Ten fan out there. Is he happy with this?
Well, I can tell you from my experience in 2018, when the Big Ten moved their conference tournament to Madison Square Garden, that Big Ten fan was not happy about New York. So they're probably not super happy about Oregon either. It does take some adjustment, but if you don't make these moves, you're left behind by the SEC. If you allow the SEC to add in Oklahoma and Texas, and you don't counter that in any way, you're not left completely in the dust, but you're on maybe your own tier ahead of the Big 12 and the ACC, but you're behind the highest tier. Now you're right there, and you're going to stay right there. And Oregon, allowing them to enter the league at a discount to league members, allowing them to enter the league has helped you stay there. I was on a show before we started where a Big Ten centric host said that he thought that the Big Ten was 3 teams and then a drop off. And I'm like, I'm not buying that at all. No. I mean, you've got SC, you've got Illinois, you've got Michigan, Nebraska. Nebraska defeated Cincinnati. Cincinnati has now done very well in the Big 12. So I would say the Big Ten is a very deep conference. It's not reflected in the polls. I don't care about the polls. We'll see where it is when we get to the first or second week of November and the committee has their say about what the rankings are.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all, which is probably a surprising answer because I think they've
You're Mr. Tradition, man. You want to
yeah, I am. I mean, I'm.
You want to go back to the BCS formula.
I do. I still do. But I still think the Big Ten runs through Ohio State and Michigan and everything there. And I think the healthiest thing that could happen for the Big Ten is somebody other than them win a national title. And I've said that for years. And that's why Penn State is a massive disappointment to me. It's like, prove it. And as Mike knows, Big Ten traditionalists are very traditional people. Like, show me. Oregon, come in. And you know what Oregon showed me? They've showed me in a year and change that they can go into the Big House and beat Michigan down, that they can go into a whiteout and win, that they can beat Ohio State head-to-head, which very few teams do. And, they lost the Rose Bowl, but, I mean, I'm like, they're on a collision course right now for a 12-0 game with Ohio State. So if we're not taking Oregon seriously, Oregon and Indiana have 2 of the 5 best winning percentages since the start of last year. It's a good show. I think Cignetti and Indiana, they've proved it was like, prove it. And they're fine. You know, do I think they're national championship good? No. But I think, like Mike said, the difference to me between the SEC and the Big Ten, the SEC has more teams capable of reaching the playoff, I think, but not by much. I would take the top half. The bottom half of the Big Ten is pretty bad, but the top half where, I'm projecting out, I was saying that earlier, Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Michigan, USC, Penn State, even at 9-3, Nebraska, Illinois, Washington. All of those teams could win 9 games this year.
Right.
So it's not bad. But I think it would be healthy, like I said, for something other than Ohio State, Michigan to happen. It did before when Penn State was down post-Paterno and Michigan was waiting through like a 10-year thing with Hoke and Rich Rod. Wisconsin and Michigan State kind of carried the flag for the conference for a minute. And that wasn't good because and then not that it wasn't healthy for the conference, but neither one of those teams was national championship good.
They had a ceiling.
Right.
Yeah.
Like with the possible exception of that Russell Wilson, Wisconsin team that lost on 2 Hail Marys. So
I talked to Brett Bielema in advance of the Illinois-Indiana showdown, and he said that when they were that good at Wisconsin, they still had trouble getting in the living rooms of that next player that I don't know. I don't think it would timeline was, but someone like Jamar Chase, they struggled to get those guys connected to those players. Right. And he said, now it's not the same, that you can at an Illinois or an Indiana, like get some attention from that type of talent. It was much more difficult in the old era.
Right.
So I think you're 100% right that it wasn't in that window. It wasn't as strong a Big Ten, but the Big Ten has come back very well. And I think what the reason I don't agree with Bill about going back to the BCS is because you want to see all this. You want to see games that are consequential and exciting, and we're seeing that. We got, and in a lot of ways, we had to wait last year till the end of the year to see those games. All the games in the SEC, Florida, Ole Miss, Auburn, Texas A&M, etc. Those games, Georgia Tech, those games were drawing us in. We're getting drawn in now, and we're a week into October, and these games we know are consequential. So I think college football is so much better now than when I was a young person, or even during the bulk of my career. It's just no American sport has taken as great a leap forward in commanding our attention as college football has in the last couple of years.
And last thing I'll say is, like, it requires you to adjust your thinking. There's no question, because I'm writing this later this week. To me, Michigan's most important game within the confines of this season is USC this weekend. If they lose to USC, you're kind of staring at that 9-3. If they go out to the Coliseum and win, they could be here. And here's where it gets weird, is like they could be 10-1. Ohio State could be 11-0. My entire life, that would be like Christmas, like the greatest day ever, because it's the best rivalry ever, and there's no other rivalry that compares. But now let's think about the consequences of that. Ohio State ends this losing streak to Michigan. Michigan gets a 9 seed. Michigan beats Ohio State, prolongs Ryan Day's misery, and they could still go to the Big Ten championship game. So to me, when you guys talk consequences, those aren't consequences to me. If we were still in I had somebody tell me this over the summer.
15 million people still tune in.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's just not. And I had somebody tell me
it's not the same, but
you
there
can't
are
tell
more
me it's
games.
the same.
Okay, so if Michigan, and this is true in college basketball with the truly greatest rivalry, Duke-Carolina, the consequences of Duke-Carolina are, did I beat Duke or did I beat Carolina? That's what makes it a great rivalry. It shouldn't matter whether or not your season ends because you lost that game. It should matter just if it's a true rivalry. What matters is I lost to the guys I want to beat the most. That's what makes it the best rivalry. And people always try to diminish when I say Carolina Duke is the greatest rivalry in American sports. People want to say, oh yeah, but they played twice, and if they could lose and still win the national championship. Yeah, but what makes it a great rivalry is, man, I lost to them. And and that was all I wanted, was to beat them. That's what makes it a great rivalry. If Michigan and Ohio State is a great rivalry, it's the best rivalry in college football. But when those two play, as was the case last year, Ohio State went on and won the national championship, but it wasn't a perfect year. It was a championship year, and they all got rings, and they're all happy. But that Michigan loss is always going to be a little bit of a mark on them.
I agree with that, but I'm saying, but that's how I think Ohio State and Michigan fans want it. They want the consequence. They want the fact that had we been in a 4-team era, Ryan Day might be gone.
Which is amazing, because since he has the #1 winning percentage all time of college football, he would have been fired.
Tell people, like,
makes the rivalry a little insane and not great.
Look at John Cooper's winning percentage, just take the Michigan game out of it.
Yeah,
2-10-1 against Michigan. Go everything else. That game, and that's how we won it, though.
But the world shouldn't just exist for Ann Arbor and Columbus. It should be from Eugene to Piscataway, or from Gainesville to LA. It shouldn't just be those two, is my point. And we had evolved through the 14 playoff, through those 10 years, into college football only matters in Tuscaloosa, Athens, Columbus, Norman, and that's it. Those 4 or 5 teams. Who did I leave out of that group? Clemson, South Carolina. That's it.
Put in 8 more, Mike, and make it a Super League, and those people, myself included, will be. No, we can't do that today. We don't have time. Yeah, but
we got to cut it off.
All of that sounds very good if you put them in their own league and call it like AFC Junior. That sounds very good.
Do that and see how happy, as we can see from Penn State fans, see how happy someone in Tuscaloosa is about going 3-9.
Yeah, what's the line you always give me? Like they have to go home happy, right? Like 9 times a year. I've always appreciated that one-liner from you.
All right, we will continue this argument at the 3:00 meeting today. And see how it goes. My point on the 12 team, and then we'll get out of here, is you got to keep it at 12 because good teams, it keeps good teams out. And I think that's where you lose consequences when not good teams still get in. So the cutoff at 12 is good. Alabama didn't get in last year. They were good. Miami was good last year, whatever. They didn't get in. And that's how you got to keep the consequence factor in. 12 is a good size. I really hope they don't go to 16, but we will see. All right, back to the Trocchi trivia question before we get out of here. Who can name – Bender, I'll let you go first. The last Big Ten school to win the Big Ten football championship game and the Big Ten men's basketball tournament in the same year.
I kind of need help. I'm not sure. I don't think it's Michigan, although I feel like that because Michigan would have had to been the last 4 years, Mike, and I don't think they did it. And I think the answer is Ohio State. Is there a Michigan State team that's probably the answer, right?
I was going to say Michigan State.
D'Antonio and Izzo, but which year?
Yeah,
I need help on the
around 14 or 15. I don't have the exact year, but it was around 14 or 15.
So if it's 14 or 15, they won the Big Ten championship in football in 2015.
15.
So did they win the basketball tournament that year?
I think they did.
So that's probably
that's my guess because I know it's not Ohio State. They did not win the Big Ten men's basketball tournament.
Look at this cooperation between Bender and DeCourcy.
I think that's got to be it.
You guys collaborated, and that is correct.
Yeah.
Aha!
Michigan State 2015, they won the football. Michigan State 16, Iowa 13. Connor Cook was the MVP. Michigan State went on to lose in the first round of the CFP to Alabama, and then in the spring, Michigan State 66, Purdue 62. In the Big Ten tournament final, Denzel Valentine was the MVP. Michigan State went on to lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament to MTSU.
Oh, that was not a good day for them. I remember all of those.
Anyway, great job. All right, well, that was really fun. Mike, thanks for coming in, making some time for us. Thank you to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-American podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks for those of you who came in to watch on our YouTube channel. Thanks to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you soon.